Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Look at that. I
You
can
did
push
it.
buttons like anybody's business.
There
All
you
right.
go, definitely a button pusher.
So according to Casio time, it is now 6 p.m. on November 20th, 2024, which means it's time for our regular meeting of the Cohasset School Committee. We're going to start with our call to order, which I just effectively did. Then we're going to do a roll call. I'll just go in random order. Mr. Carr.
Present.
Ms. Leskey.
Present.
Mr. Dial, present. Astute and regular observers of the school committee would note that we have two absences. Ms. Hannah, she's going to be a few minutes late, so we will see her arrival shortly. And Mr. McClellan, who had another engagement, and so therefore you're stuck with me substituting him for him as the chair of this meeting. So with that, we do have a quorum of 3 out of the 5, so we can proceed with business, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, opening remarks, I will just say, we've got a nice substantive agenda to cover. We've got some trips on the agenda, which is great, excellent opportunities. We're gonna be talking about MCAS scores, which I think there's some stuff to be proud of and stuff to, as it was explained to me, glows and grows. So we'll talk about that. And then the other thing that I just wanted to extend a specific thanks to our faculty as we're going through our parent meetings. I know that's special for that's an extra work for our faculty and our staff to help coordinate, meet with our parents. But I can say as a parent of a middle schooler, I benefited from having a conference with our teachers. And I just wanted to make sure our staff and faculty know that we appreciate their willingness and attentiveness to those matters. It really helps connect us with our kids' efforts in our school. So thank you very much with that. With that, I'll move it over to our next agenda block, which is agenda block B, public comment. This is the time in the agenda for public comment. Usually we ask that you limit your public comment to anything that's not on the agenda and hold off for anything that's on the agenda for the appropriate time at the agenda. But you can let us know now if you are going to have a comment at the time. I'm scarily responsible. Oh, you have it. That's good. So do we have any, Dr. Scollins? No comments. Still no comments. So we're going to close off public comment. And now we're going to move into our invited guests. We have 2 invited guests. We're going to start in ascending order of schools, at least age-wise, with 2 trips. So Ms. Sandys, welcome. And I believe we're going to talk about a Quebec trip.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. The floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, go Scott. So I'm going to read, if you don't mind. So my name's Kathy Sanchez, and I'm here. I am the French teacher at Cohasset Middle School, and I'm here tonight to propose a 3-day trip to Quebec City for grade 8 French students on May 8th, 9th, and 10th, 2025. This cultural excursion will give our students a chance to practice their French while learning about one of the oldest cities in North America. We've received strong interest from students and parents, and with past support from Cohasset Public Schools, we have enjoyed many successful trips. This will be my 16th year chaperoning. I didn't go 2 years because of COVID. We have teachers from Cohasset Middle School who have also volunteered to chaperone. Our chaperone ratio is 1 to 10, sorry. And we have 15 students this year. We have a small group of students. So we are going with Scituate. We have gone with Scituate in the past 3 years. The plan is to go with Scituate. They have about 30 students. Not all students will go, but that's what our numbers are so far. This is our 30 I mentioned going with Scituate, and I also want to add that Cohasset and Scituate high schools have gone on past trips together to the French exchange program, which is a very successful program that has been going on for several years. Our tour company is Jump Street Tours, which I have used for several years. Several trips, and Jump Street tour guide stays with the group the entire weekend. We travel by motor coach, and we visit all sites by walking or with the motor coach. Activities may include a walking tour of the old walled city of Quebec, Memorial Sea Waterfalls, Maple Sugar Shack with traditional food and dancing, the St. Lawrence River Boat Cruise, and the Huron First Nation Light Show. Students' academic expectations include research of sites and journal writing about the trip. So the CMS World Language Department believes that this excursion will help our students understand the importance of learning about other cultures through language and lay the foundation for further study abroad. So if you have any questions, hopefully I explained well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mr. Mills.
These were chaperones.
Just in time.
So chaperone, I know.
Did you pledge allegiance tonight?
You did, you were quick.
We're very efficient today. So with that, I'll open it up to the committee for any questions. Mr. Carl, start with you.
No questions. I went to a different school. I took this trip when I was that age. I loved it. It's one of the most iconic cities and history. So I learned so much. And people don't realize how really close it is to us. So I think this is a great.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city.
Ms. Lesky?
Thank you for doing this for our children. Thank you for doing it for my child who will benefit from this. But as you were speaking, I also was reminded too about the way in which tradition helps to build community. And I think of this trip being one that my child has experienced as a Cohasset Middle School tradition, part of the tradition of being a student taking French in the district. And I think that that too is something to also be recognized in terms of how we think about some of these sort of milestone moments for our students.
Yeah,
So
and it's a great memory. It's a great memory for them. They'll always remember, as you mentioned. Yeah, and then the other older kids say, to the younger, the older kids to the younger, the next group coming up. Oh, I heard about this trip from, an older friend of the family or a sibling. So
I think it's a really nice, just sort of a side benefit of trips like this, or even just events that the district does.
Thank you, Ms. Lesky. Ms. Hannah has joined. I'm not going to put you on the spot just yet. I'll let you get settled in, and I'll ask a couple. I'll channel my inner Craig McClellan, and if you could just tell us a little bit about the supervision aspect of the trip and how the kids will be supervised, and whether there will be gender appropriate separation and overnight accommodations, et cetera.
okay, so we do, as I mentioned, we have chaperone. We have the ratio is 1 to 10. Mr. Mills chaperoned last year, so we do, for security reasons, we are together all the time, walking, either we're doing a walking tour, sometimes we do split off into smaller groups, but we're always together. One of our chaperone is with students at all times. At the hotel, we have, usually we're all on one floor, small group anyways, we're all on one floor, and the boys on one section, the girls on the other, chaperone in the middle. We do have, and we do have yes, we have overnight security, and they start at 10 and end at 6 in the morning, and then report to me, if they would come to me, obviously, in the middle of the night if there's any issues. Yeah, so.
That's very fulsome. Well, as you know from this other requests, I think myself in particular and the committee as a whole are very supportive of these trips. These are incredible educational and memory building opportunities for our students, and we thank you so much for putting them together. One request I'll reiterate that I'd love to see at some point is we get these trips and we review them. It'd be great to get an inventory of which ones we have, because the one thing that not the one thing, but one thing I worry about is the aggregate burden on our families. These trips cost money, and so you don't want to create a situation where there are some kids who are able to do tons and tons of things and other kids who are not able to do other things. We've done some great things with some trips and fundraising and the like, but it would just be great to have that mapped out, because the reality, I think, for most of our families is that we're families of not unlimited means. And so it'd just be great to understand as we're approving these trips where that burden in the aggregate can fall on a family who wants to do as much as they can. So that could be something for a future agenda item. We don't need to assess it now, but I'm still interested in that.
Could it just to that point,
Yes.
in the past, in working with Madame, we've sometimes had families that had difficulty covering the tuition for the trip, and the schools helped out, or we've done different things to make it affordable. And also the last couple of years, Madame Sanchez has worked with Situate. So instead of sending a group of 15 kids, let's say, with prices being, exorbitant, we'll share the bus with Situate, and each group will have their own tour guide. They'll have some similar experiences, some sort of a different itinerary, but overall, that keeps the price down too. And then along the way, I mean, we saw last year, some kids made friends or rekindled old friendships where they might have played sports together when they were younger. So it's a really positive aspect of the way the trip is put together.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and I appreciate it. I mean, Quebec is a French-speaking province right here. It'd be a shame not to take advantage of that. So I really, again, appreciate you guys putting this together. With that, I'll close off my time. Ms. Hannah, I don't know if you wanted to take the opportunity to ask any questions or make any comments.
I don't have any questions. I think, I absolutely agree with the fact that being able to give these opportunities to the kids is crucial and important. So I love it. And
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And so with that, unless there's any other comments from you, I'd entertain a motion to approve the Cohasset Middle School Quebec trip of 2025. Any
So moved.
motion to that effect made by Ms. Leskey? Do I have a second?
second.
Second by Ms. Hannah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No abstentions. So the motion carries 4-0. And thank you very much, Ms. Sanders.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate you.
Merci.
So cool.
Yeah.
Bon voyage.
I won't even pretend to
À
do
la
the French.
prochaine.
Thank you. Great. So I think we'll invite Mr. Willis to the front for a discussion about the Cohasset High School Europe trip in ascending order. So the floor is yours.
I
Thank
was
you.
gonna say, maybe before he starts, we could just say congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Big win last night. Down to the wire. Those of us in the stands, I'm sure you as well, felt the stress and the pressure as the last seconds ticked by, but
It was really fun afterwards.
yeah. And we wish you luck on Saturday.
Thank you very much. Linfield. Defending state champ, so we're gonna try to take
It's
it.
time for a new one.
I hope so. So
Yeah.
good
Knock
luck.
him down a peg.
That'd be great.
So, but Europe trip, it's for 2026. So Tell us what you know.
So this will be my 12th, I think. We tend to go every year to leave room for other trips that opportunities that pop up, and so this one will be kind of international relations focused, starting in Geneva and ending in Munich. We will go through a good chunk of Switzerland and Liechtenstein and go to Salzburg in Austria and then end up in Munich in Germany. It is the agenda from, I want to say 10, maybe 11 days. It will be capped at probably in the neighborhood of 40. It's we usually cap at whatever the bus can fit. So we usually, we'll open it up to everybody, and then when it's full, we start a wait list from there and go to about 40. I think our last trip in Switzerland, the max bus was 49, so we had 42 kids and 7 adults, because it's a 1 to 6 adults to chaperones to students. So it's 1 to 6, plus we have a tour director from EF who comes with us as well. We're gonna, we add things as we go, but that itinerary is a customized itinerary that I did through EF. They and I have been working on it for about 6 months now. So I've been throwing them things that I want to do, and they've been working out how to get it in there. And then when the price was too high, we would drop stuff, move stuff to try to get it back down close. That the price that's there that includes some travel bonuses, but I'm hoping that we can actually get it down under another 400 less, because of the amount of students we'll have, and because we'll be able to offer it, I hope, to students with a little bit of an early registration bonus. The goal is to get them in before, give them the option that if they want to sign up before January, they can. That way they can knock some money off of it, and also gives them a full year to split into payments and to organize fundraisers if they so choose. Then over April break at 26. And the chaperones would be worked out between myself and Mr. Scott. We tend to do I try to come up with a mix of teachers, a couple of people who've gone with me before, so I've got some experience, a couple of people who haven't had an opportunity to go on a trip like this before, And then maybe a few people who are not teachers because to lower the burden of subs in terms of the costs. We usually miss 1, sometimes 2 days max of school. Because we usually fill a bus and have one trip, that we usually get our first, we have at least the last 5 or 6 times we've gotten our first priority for departure dates. So we've been able to minimize the missed days. Usually it's 1 or 2 on the front side of April break. We've always been back by, we haven't missed any days on the other side of April break, which is good because it's usually junior, senior dominated, and they come back for AP exams. So.
Okay. I don't, just before we move it to an open floor, the materials seem to have maybe some pages skipped. So can you remind us what the cost is?
Oh, I have it here. If you want to give me the cost, if you
Cost
want to make me a code, I have it already.
I want to say that it's
See, this is-
5,100, 5,200. And that's with the global protection and with the a couple of other fees that are optional. And that's also without the early registration bonuses. So I think that if they were to, but full price, the max would be, I want to say it's 5,200.
I think that's
Last
about it,
page.
yeah.
Yes, there's the first 8 days right there.
Yeah. We saw these 9 to 10.
Yeah.
Um,
And then here's the.
there it
price.
is, yeah.
There it is. Yeah, we didn't have any in that.
The adult cost isn't actually that because our adults go for free. It's 1 for 6. So that's it.
And you said it's junior, senior dominated?
They're the ones that tend to sign up first. A lot of the younger kids, we've had on occasion, I never had more than 1 or 2 freshmen, and I've had on occasion sophomores go. Typically, though, the parents want to wait until their kids are older and do it. When I used to teach AP European history to 10th grade, I had a lot of 10th graders. Now that it's an 11th to 12th grade course, I don't get very many 10th graders. And a lot of times if the parents have students in the 10th grade, they're like, well, you go every other year, so in a couple of years we'll try it. So, I open it to everybody. We come up. So the goal is to try to have introduce it to students and parents before the holidays. Sometimes parents and families like to use that as their launching point. And it also gives them a chance to think about it and have a few weeks to sign up ahead of January 1st because you get a discount if you sign up the previous year. And then, it's not a senior trip. It's not an AP Euro. I teach AP European history, and they're the ones that seem to be the most interested. But it's not restricted to them anyway. I open it to everybody, and it's very much I put stuff all over the school, and we tell all the kids, and we have them come in, and then I tell them when the registration is going to open, and then we usually go from there. Typically, in the past, it has filled up relatively quickly within a month or 2. But I would also say that about 75 to 80% of kids who get on the wait list eventually do get in, because what happens is a lot of families will sign up early, and then by May or June they decide, we're going to do something different, and they'll back and kids will get in that way.
So I'll just open up the committee for questions. If you have questions or want to raise your hand.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Ms. Lasky?
Could you elaborate a little bit further, please, on the fundraising aspect? Because what I heard was sort of that, like, if kids decide they want to fundraise, is that done as a
so
group? Is it done individually?
We haven't done them
Or
as a
not
group
something- okay.
because we would do them as a group. I would be happy to do them as a group if everybody wanted to. Typically they don't, which means that when we've done them as a group, some kids have put a lot more work into it and gotten less. So what I encourage them to do is if they want to do smaller independent ones in small groups or even individually, I'm going to support them and help them do that. If they wanted to do a big group one and everybody was in on it, I would help them do that as well. Typically over the course of a year, the other benefit of if we can introduce it now and they can get started, it lets them spread out payments over a 14-month period. So sometimes I find out about the fundraisers that they because they do it on their own in the community or within their own families and stuff. But the fundraising thing is it's kind of wide open and it's really up to them. Whatever they have the energy to do, I'm going to help them and support them and do it. But I don't have any big set organizations that I run for them.
And do you feel like the student body is aware of that opportunity enough so that a child for whom fundraising would be essential to their participation in the trip, that they would feel like there was at least enough sort of understanding of how this works to like come to you and say like, I really want to go, but you know, my family can't quite swing this or could only swing half of it. What are my options?
I don't want to overgeneralize. I think that I've been amazed by the innovation of some kids in terms of what they've come up with and how they've done it. And I certainly tell them right from the get-go at the beginning meeting when I introduce it to them and parents that, hey, if you have ideas for fundraisers, I'm on board and I'll help you out. But I'm not going to give them to you and I'm not going to run them for you. I'm going to help you run it and I'm going to be a resource. So whether they take me up on that is, I guess, hit or miss. It's different every year. But I don't want to say they are all aware of it because I don't know that that's true.
Any questions?
I would just, if you're not familiar with Education First, this is a class act. They are based here in Boston. They run, this is all they do. The whole family is owned company for the whole time, so they're a highly competent operator.
Yeah, I've always worked with EF ever since my first trip. We went to Russia in 06, 07, and that was the first time. And I just loved them as a company, and so I've just worked with them ever since. There are other companies. Some are most of them tend to be a little pricier, but they might have, you know, maybe they have bigger meals or hotels close to the city and stuff. I've always been of the attitude, listen, if you get me there, I'm going to augment the trip and make it. I've done this enough to know how to like kind of add things as we go to make them, you know, I just think the experience of going as a group for the kids is something that it's just been life changing. I've seen so many of my travelers come back and immediately start like applying to college in Europe. I've seen that. I've got, when we were in Lucerne last year, I ran into a whole family whose son had gone with me a couple of trips earlier, and they said, oh, he's living in Italy right now with friends because he got the bug when he came over here. And it's just, I've seen it just change kids' lives, and I think it's a really amazing experience for them. And that's why I hope that I'm, you know, vocal enough when I tell them, hey, if you don't think that you can afford it, let's talk about that. Let's make it work. Because I bet we can find resources for $5,000 over the course of the year.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the, again, correct me if I'm wrong, the supervision aspects? How will, you know,
Sure. So
arrangements be arranged, et cetera?
the trips are, so we're usually on one bus together for most of the trip. There have been trips on occasion where we've done trains, boats. I'm actually trying to work a little bit of a train one into this one, but I think it's going to be the majority bus. It's 1 to 6 adults to, plus we have a tour director who's an EF person who's there with us all the time. I would say 90% of the trip is as a group or in small groups. There are free time opportunities in cities where we'll be in a square and we'll say, okay, we've got 2 hours and this is here. We're in groups of 3 or 4. They all have my cell number, the tour director's cell number, the chaperones are just kind of spread around. I think that those free time opportunities are sometimes the kids' most favorite, or at least one of the most impactful moments, because they are in a city where they don't speak the language and now they've got to function and it's just kind of amazing to see what they do. But the trip as a whole, it's not just me, the tour leader. I have a tour director that EF sends with me, and they're with us. They're there all the time. They run tours there all the time. All the hotels and restaurants we use are used to having multiple tour groups through. EF has, you know, places they use, so they're always pretty good about, you know, this is we do this all the time, so this is where we could be and what we can do.
What about lodging and sleeping arrangements?
All hotels that EF uses, usually a lot of other groups sometimes. Sleeping arrangements are always, you know, there's male and female rooms between 2 and 4. I get them into groups ahead of time, and we sort of jockey them into groups where we have groups of 4, but then 2 twos within it, so that they get their preferred roommates. Chaperones are always on the same, you know, on the same floors, and they're in the hotels that EF uses all the time. Oftentimes, there's other tour groups from other schools in some of the hotels we go to, because there's other tours that are either intersecting with ours or traveling along either the same route or reverse. Yeah, I mean, I between myself and EF, we've just done this. I mean, I do, you know, room checks and stuff like that, but other than that, I don't.
Sounds like you've got a lot of experience doing it as
Yeah.
well, so
Yeah.
that also, and keeping kids out of trouble.
We had, we're batting 1,000 so far, so hopefully we'll keep going. You know, the only, so in all the years we've had, the worst things that have ever happened is we've caught kids planning to do things.
There you go. That
So
means
it's
it's
always,
working.
and we're, yeah, no, there's a pretty amazing shared responsibility and shared, one of the things I emphasize with them right from the get-go, and we do a number of meetings and little workshops up until the trips leave, is, you know, this is you really are making each other's trip too. Like this is great. I'm loving that you have this. I love that you get to do this. But in the end, you got to recognize that you're, you know, you have an opportunity to positively or negatively impact a life-changing experience for 51 other people. And you got to take that seriously, and the shared social responsibility of it. They really do take it seriously. They really do look out for each other. It's amazing how close they get. I've seen kids who didn't even hang out or really know each other at all beforehand become very fast friends on trip and afterwards. And it's, I think that collective sort of look out for each other. This is where I think my coaching thing comes in. I treat the trips very similar to the way I treat a soccer season, where I tell the kids from day one, listen, you don't all have to be best friends, but you're all responsible for all of us coming home happy and having had a great time. And I think they have all universally across the board, the Cohasset students I've taken, have always taken that very seriously. It's been great.
That's great. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Mr. Carr?
So there's a great deal of unrest today here, but hopefully that will be wrapped up. If you don't have a plan, can you discuss with them timeline for cancellation and things? I hope you don't
Yeah.
have to do that, but I think it's something that they.
Yeah, we've had right up until we can do cancellation with either money back or with vouchers and stuff all the way up until we buy plane tickets, which is usually a couple of months beforehand. And we've had it. We had a trip to Spain. We were going to Morocco, and there was unrest in Morocco, and we had to, at the last, basically 3 weeks beforehand, we had to cut Morocco from the trip, and we were able to add a couple of other states in southern Spain to it. We had a trip that was completely canceled because of the Iceland volcano one year, where we were all getting ready to go to Prague and Vienna, and we had to, the whole trip was canceled because the Iceland volcano went up the week before we were supposed to leave and shut down. And we were able to basically get all the kids their tickets, and all the kids who wanted to, they could either get a voucher to go the next year, or they could get a voucher to go to the next year, and we were able to re-offer it to students and get them all sold for full price and get all the money back for that. When I went to Russia one year, we were in St. Petersburg, and there were riots in Moscow, and we were in Moscow, and there were riots in St. Petersburg, and we found out about both when we got home. We were in France when the Notre Dame, we were in southern France when the cathedral burned down. We were into Paris. We went to Paris, and there was a tourist attack on tourists in Paris right before, like a month before we had gone. And I always tell parents and students, the safest time to go is after that happens, because now the security is crazy and everybody's on high alert. But so I had a trip where we were all going to Eastern Europe, and I had to rebook everybody's flight the weekend before we left and get us on 5 different flights because of cancellation. So we've pretty much run into most things up until then. But yeah, when EF does this all the time. A good friend of mine was on a trip to Greece where they had to cancel the trip and send everybody home from Rockland High School, and because a student had a cardiac arrest while they were there. Totally unrelated to anything. It was just a perceived thing. And the way EF dealt with it blew my mind. And I was just like, they're so good at this, and they just have every contingency lined up. So, I feel pretty comfortable. I feel like I've seen most of what we're going to see. I'm sure there will war breaking out, in which case we would cancel the trip and we would find something different.
If there are other questions or comments from the committee, I will request a motion to approve the Cohasset High School Europe trip for 2026. Motion made by Mr. Carr. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hannah.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No. All right, the motion carries 4-0, which is unanimous with our quorum tonight. So thank you very much for doing this trip again. And we look forward to hearing about how wonderful it was.
you all very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks for that too.
And good luck.
Thank you.
Well, I'll be honest, having my kid live in Europe afterwards isn't a selling point. So I don't think. He's gonna stay here.
Same way. Mine's in Arizona, that's way too far.
Yeah. So, excellent. So thank you very much. That concludes our invited guests. We'll move on to our superintendent updates with our superintendent of schools, Mrs. Sarah Shannon.
Hi.
Shannon, the floor is yours.
So I would like to start off by celebrating Educational Support Professionals Day, which was today. Our educational support professionals, or ESPs, are integral to the success of our district, of our teachers, and of our students. They are the people that our students and our staff rely on a day-to-day basis. They are often the first people who celebrate a student when they need to be celebrated, or they are the first person to notice that they're struggling, or to give them the pep talk that they might need. And their kindness, their compassion, their skill for working expertly with our students does not go unnoticed. We'd be lost without them. And our schools all did different things to celebrate our ESPs today. And we just want to publicly thank them for all that they do on a regular basis. We could not function without them. I also wanted to give a quick update on our feasibility study process. We are well on our way. We are probably about halfway through the visioning process, or the feasibility process. We finished the visioning sessions and we've been having some program meetings. Those are smaller meetings about the numbers of spaces that we need, things like that. A lot of the location studies have been completed. They actually came today and they did a traffic study. And so we're ready to update the community about where we are. So we will be holding a community forum on Tuesday, December 2nd at 6:30 right here in the Learning Commons. We'll be sending information out about that tomorrow. And, you know, we hope that people will come and listen and ask questions. It's definitely still a work in progress. We won't be completed with the feasibility process until mid to end of February. But we think it's really important that the community gets regular updates. And so we invite everybody to come in on Tuesday, December 2nd at 6:30.
I think Tuesday's the 3rd.
Oh, might be.
Oh, yes, it is December 3rd.
December
Yes,
3rd.
yes, it is.
It's December 3rd
Okay.
at 6:30. Thank you.
Very well.
You're right. The 2nd is the Monday we come back.
Yes.
So December 3rd. Also wanted to share that as part of my entry plan, I had scheduled and planned to spend full days in all of the schools, and I was able to spend a day in Deer Hill and in Osgood already. Tomorrow I'll be at the middle school, and Friday I'll be at the high school, and they have been really fun. There is nothing better than being out of my office and seeing teachers and talking to teachers and seeing students and talking with students. And I've just learned a lot and been able to just sort of see a regular day in each school. And it's been great. And so it's a practice that is a part of my entry plan, but actually I think is a practice I will continue to try and do like twice a year, because I think there's just great value in being available for any staff who's looking to just check in or touch base or whatever the case might be. I also love when teachers say, hey, I'm doing this. Why don't you come by and see? Because then you get to see some really great things happening. So I thank Osgood and Deer Hill for hosting me, and I'm looking forward to being at the middle school and the high school this week. You know, Mr. Willis was just here, but I do want to congratulate all of our fall sports teams, most of whom have wrapped up their seasons. The girls soccer team played a tough game last night. They did lose to Sutton in the end 3-1, but we're excited to go watch the boys play on Saturday at Curry College in the state tournament for soccer for Division 4. I think we're not quite sure what time that game is gonna be yet, so as soon as we know, we definitely will publicize that among the community. And I just want to encourage the entire community this Friday night at 7 p.m. or Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. is the middle school musical. It is High School Musical Junior. And so it is sure to be a lot of fun. We're also going to be publicizing that with our elementary schools because it'd be a great play for elementary students to come and enjoy and maybe get their first taste of theater. Although I know Deer Hill does plays as well. So, but it's always fun to see the older kids performing. So I'm going Friday night and hope that lots of folks will pack the theater for our middle schoolers who put in a lot of time and energy to make this performance happen and to do it well. That's my report for today.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the report from the committee? Hearing none, I think we'll go to our next agenda block, teaching and learning, with a report on student achievement update. I think we're talking MCAS results. I'll turn it over to Dr. Scollins to take us through.
And Rock is gonna say, I was gonna say Rock Roberts, our director of data evaluation and curriculum. Pulled this all together, did most of the work on this, so he will take us through.
And it's his birthday today.
Oh, yeah.
And it's his birthday today. So I'm gonna bring tell
What I wanted.
That's for you.
I know, thank you. I thought I saw them bring.
Celebrate with the entire community.
And Michael Stapleton, our director of student services, will also be sharing some information, so the three of us will take you through.
All right. So I just thrilled to be here on my birthday to celebrate our data. And one of the nice things about being in this position for the last 2 years in Cohasset is really being able to see our data at all the different buildings and kind of creating this presentation was really kind of creating our story. It's because the data tells a story. There's a lot behind the data. Every data point is students, it's teachers, it's one grade leading into the next grade. And so I think tonight, some things I want people to take away from this is, yes, we're an exceptionally high performing district. We have a lot to celebrate. We're proud of our teachers, we're proud of our students. And we're always looking for the areas to grow. We don't rest on our laurels. We look at the areas where we can improve and seek to improve those areas. The other thing that I would say, just as a second year member of the Cohasset Public School District, is one of the reasons I came here, and one thing that I see in the work that we do is we really do try to live our vision, our mission, and our core values. And our vision of a graduate is really, I think the whole notion is that our students are shaped by those things. So rather than start today and kind of go through the data, I really wanted to start where the foundations are laid with Osgood. So the presentation will go from our youngest students to our seniors. So we'll have our celebrations. We're gonna, before we actually get into the data, we're gonna talk a little bit about MCAS and the election, because that's the topic I'm sure people are thinking about. A quick.
I think I have the wrong one. Did I have the wrong?
I think you're good. You're
You
good.
do? Are you
Yep.
sure?
Nope, that's the wrong one.
Thank you. I'm gonna touch everything. Lots of different, sorry, I apologize.
It's revised.
It is. Let me see that. Sorry about that. As you were
Okay.
talking about, and I said,
You know what, I had 6 different versions of happy birthday today, so I think I'm good.
Good. I guess we could make that happen.
I bet you could. I bet you could.
We could have had
Okay.
French singing
Yeah.
French, right?
Yes. Now that would have been something.
all right. There we go. Now we're good.
That's it, yeah. So, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about MCAS, the election, and then move into this spring data and highlight some things and then talk about kind of our next steps.
So accountability. So here is our 2024 accountability data for meeting and exceeding our targets. So high school is, and I'm going to do my best with this. This is a new formula too for us. And so I've got all my little information here. And so they changed it last year. So I want to do a little bit of that before I talk a little specifically of our numbers. But in 2023, it was 2 years of data. Now they're looking at 3 years of data. They're weighting it a little differently. So prior, it was 22, 23, the 22 years were 40% of the weighting, and then the 23 was 60%. Now it's 3 years of data. So the first 2 years are 15%. Your most current is 60%. And so that kind of changes how things look a little bit. And they also are looking at some of the different pieces around chronic absenteeism now has a little more weight than it did in the past, because that's a problem that we have in the district. They're looking at that gap between our lowest performing students and higher, and then what's happening with our general achievement scores. And so that's why we have, so it's like this big soup. So we're still trying to figure it all out because it is so new for us. But they're still looking at achievement, student growth, high school completion rate for the high school, looking at English language proficiency, which actually isn't a big, we don't have a lot of students who are MLs or multi-language learners, but that is a criteria. And then the chronic absenteeism also, and then the number of students that take advanced courses at the high school level. So those are all of the criteria that they use. So if we look at the high school, our lowest performing students earned 4 out of 4 for growth and 4 out of 4 for achievement. That's very, very good. And so we're really happy about that. We earned all our points for chronic absenteeism. So we did not get dinged on that. Because at the high school level, we actually don't have a problem with absenteeism. Other districts do. We do not, which is really nice. And then the 7 out of 12 points for all students in achievement. It's interesting because this is, if we look at it from a district-wide, if you want to go in and look at all of the accountability ratings, if you look at the high school, it has 4 out of 12. So we're actually, is that right?
Yeah,
Is that right?
they have two
They
different.
have 2 different numbers, so we're not exactly sure, and we need more information about what that means. But this is where we're at right now. And then for non-high school, so that's anything obviously 3 through 8, we had 10 out of 12 for achievement in math, 6 out of our 8 points for growth in math and ELA, and our lowest performing students, chronic absenteeism, we didn't get any points. So we do have our absenteeism at the elementary level is higher than we would like it to be. It gets a little better in middle school, and then it's not a problem in high school. So, and even at Osgood. So that's something that we're going to look into and work with families around trying to get our kids into school and figure out why they're not coming to school, and then supporting families to get their students here. And then these are the really nice numbers, our accountability percentiles. So we get kind of ranked 95% at the high school, the middle school 93%. 93%, and then Deer Hill is 87%. Those are really strong numbers around the accountability. Questions, or want me to just keep moving?
Yeah, no, I think from the community perspective, if you guys have questions, just jump in. It's better to do it now while we've got the data and the slides up and fresh in our minds. So just, Ms. Leskey, you looking at the question.
Yeah. Is the 4 out of 4 or the 7 out of 12, is that out of like 4 out of 4 areas of growth, or 4 out of 4 total points?
The
for
total
growth?
points.
Okay. And is that the structure for all of those sort of fractional pieces? So it's 7 out of 12 possible points in achievement?
Yes.
Okay. And what what is the definition of chronic absenteeism?
10 days or more.
Okay. And, sorry. And then the accountability percentile, that is a standard that the state creates for each district.
Right.
And so that we're meeting 95% of what the state believes we should be doing. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Build on that. Are we better than 95% of all districts in the state? Or is this, we're meeting 95% of the things that we should be doing?
So it's our,
It's a comparison with schools like us that have the same.
Okay,
sort of
so
programs.
we are better than 95% at the high school, but we have a higher accountability score than 95% of our peer schools.
That's, yes.
And that helps us put some context, because I didn't know what 7 out of 12, 7 to 12 is good or 7 to 12 is
Yeah.
bad, because
yeah,
like that was a math quiz, 7 to 12, probably not great, but
Right.
if that leads to 95% accountability percentile, that's probably pretty good.
and as we get used to this new formula, we'll have a better sense of it. It's always a little bit confusing. We kind of call it the MCAS soup, and they put all these things in together. But when we look at some of the big things around our performance, our growth, we met our targets. And so those are all good things.
And they change the formula every year.
Yes.
Well, that's good. That way you don't compare against your prior years.
Exactly.
Right, and it's really hard, and they did a big shift for this
They
year.
did.
Yeah.
Because they added an extra year, then they reweighted it, and they put, so, we thought, to be honest with you, when they rolled this out in the spring, I figured at the high school, we would see something because of just how the formula was worked around. It took away from they took it actually away from our achievement and put it in other places. So.
Looks like we got it back.
I mean, we actually did okay.
Yeah.
But when you kind of look at some of those numbers, like 12 out of 12, but so I'm just trying to figure that out.
Any other questions from the committee? Mr. Carr?
The number 10 in the chronic absenteeism, is that by semester or by year?
So
10
10
days.
days.
10 days in a year, yeah. So
In a
anything
year.
over 10 or more. Yeah, is considered chronic absenteeism.
And the state that has been their push for this is the second year in a row. And so they are raising the stakes for us in the accountability because of the absenteeism. And so it's a big focus, it's a big push, and it's, it's hard to teach students who aren't.
And is this also looking at the chronic absenteeism only of our lower performing students? Or is that just overall elementary attendees? Because here, like, I'm just reading it as
It looks at both.
didn't get the points for our
Right.
lower performing students because there's too much chronic
Correct.
absenteeism in that population.
Correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's good.
Mr. Carr?
We're working on a communication strategy around that.
Yeah, so, Michael will talk more about this towards the end, but we do have a system in place. There are certain rules and regulations and laws actually that dictate how we deal with attendance. And so when a student is absent for 5 days unexcused, they get a letter. 10 days, they get a letter. Then it sort of progressively becomes more. We have partnership meetings. We have conversations with parents. At the extreme, it does become a process where we look at court involvement, things like that. That's the extreme. I don't want to freak people out.
Right.
Because it's very rare, but there is a very thorough process.
And I'm notified as this increases for students, and so if students are on IEPs, IEP meetings will be held, information will be adopted into those documents to address challenges with absenteeism.
Oh,
So glad I'm sitting next to you.
I know, so.
Keep going, I'm gonna find it.
All right, okay. All right, so, big question that people have, what happens now? The MCAS happened, the elections happened, and now, the, MCAS is no longer considered part of your competence determination when you are graduating. We have lots of other pieces that, go into whether you, whether the competence determination has happened, right? It's not just MCAS. And so we shall see what people, what happens, but there's other things and other criteria. I know.
What is it?
It's
IT's
her
working on it.
computer.
Oh,
It's my
okay.
computer, yeah.
Oh, God. So just,
I don't know
for
what's
those
going
at
on.
home, there's a buzzing that's coming.
Yeah, I know.
from the
Well,
computer. So
yes.
that's,
Superintendent Shane's gonna take this over. I'm gonna shut my computer down, so people
Very-
don't have to listen to this.
yeah, that's.
But just before we get there, the students that are taking the fall MCAS that are making it up, it still counts. And then the law actually doesn't take effect until December 5th at the earliest. I guarantee this whole stuff.
You have to shut it down. Oh, there it goes. Oh, it's better.
So anyway, more to be revealed as we move through this and to see what it actually is going to look like in the spring, when we get more information after the law takes effect.
All right, so let's get to the data. So here's the foundation. So this represents the composite scores for our K through 2 students on DIBELS. Composite, so the DIBELS testing is a number of different components. This takes it and puts it all together. So you see where kids were in kindergarten, first and second at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. The blue is what DIBELS refers to as core plus, so they're kind of like above grade level. The green is core. Yellow is strategic, and the red is intensive. So that kind of dictates the amount of intervention, what their intervention needs are. So that gives you a sense of where our kids are in terms of, and this is all around literacy. So this is literacy K through 2. Then also at Osgood, we have iReady. And so these numbers correlate pretty closely with DIBELS. And so you can see that 75% of our students at Osgood are mid or above grade level. And then 12% being early on grade level, but considered grade level. And then the yellow is 1 grade below. And it's worth noting that of all our students at Osgood, we don't have anyone who's more than 1 grade level below, which is when we were talking with the person from iReady who was doing a lot of our training, he said, you just don't see this kind of thing because there's a lot of kids who are struggling right out of the gate. So it's pretty impressive. And here it is for math. We don't have DIBELS for math. DIBELS is all about literacy. So this is the iReady math. And here you see we have 69% mid or above and 13 at 17, 1 below, and 1% is 2 grades below. So we leave Osgood and head over to Deer Hill, walk up the hill. And here we have 3 through 5. This is DIBELS data. So we administer DIBELS K through 5. And so here you see the same thing. It's composite. The components that are tested change. They get more challenging as kids move on. The literacy the literacy demands are a little bit more complicated. So you see that you're starting to see some kids kind of in that intensive zone where the red was smaller at Osgood. It's now, you see there's a 9%, 11%, 8% kids, but still you're above and at are, 79, 80, 81%. And we also run iReady and we start MCAS. So here we have our MCAS data for grades 3 through 5 is on the top part of that slide. And the iReady 3 through 5 data is on the bottom. So just taking you through our 3 through 5 MCAS. The bar graph on the left shows our exceeding, meeting, partially meeting, not meeting with the percentages corresponding, and then the line graph on the right, it shows trends over time. So that's 2021, which is kind of a funky year because it was like an abbreviated MCAS. And then you get 22, 23, and 24. You can see just a slight dip. That's a couple percentage points between 23, 24. But we had 62% of our kids meeting or exceeding, and there's a number behind the growth percentage.
54.2.
Okay, 54.2. So what we're looking for growth in terms of state is between 40 and 60%. So we're right in that mid zone. So the kids are growing at the expected rate. And that's our 3 through 5. And then at the bottom is the iReady. The iReady kind of closely corresponds with the exceeding and meeting of MCAS. It's interesting that it's mid or above grade level, and some of the conversation I've had around iReady is it's a little bit different in different states based on what their testing is. So they were adding in a whole nother piece for Massachusetts that we're kind of predicting where your MCAS scores would be that they kind of put in place last year. And here's the same thing for math. Worth noting that the number of students exceeding in math is 14%. So that number seems to be rising pretty consistently. And our total number of students exceeding in meeting is 70%, which is a nice number. And that line graph on the right is trending upward. And then not meeting is at 5%, which is if you were looking at the iReady data from Osgood, that number was around 6 or 7. So it's interesting as kids kind of move further into mathematics. It's kind of fun to watch the math in our district move because kids are moving up and then more kids are getting exceeding, and the trend lines are nice too. All right, so then we go into science. So science grade 5, we had a nice year last year. 71% of our students exceeding and meeting. We had a nice jump from the previous year. And again, only 3% not meeting, which is a pretty good number. And now we'll move on to the middle school. So the middle school ELA, now we have 24% of students exceeding, which you see that exceeding number grow. Our total number of students meeting and exceeding is up to 75%. Our trends line is pretty stable. And then down to the iReady is we're still at 78% early on to above grade level. But you can see that the 6-5, the bottom level, that now we see a few more kids popping up in the 3 or more grade levels below. So those are a lot of our kids who are seeing a lot of support, things of that nature. And then math, we got 12% exceeding, our total 67% meeting or exceeding. Took a slight dip between 23, 24, but still a significant number at or above grade level. That 3% not meeting is a pretty good number. We're minimizing that.
And we introduced a new math program at the middle school. So sometimes you'll see a slight dip.
Yes, and that was
They're getting used to new
yeah, that
materials.
was
So we're digging in deeper and watching.
yeah, that was the implementation last year. Yeah, and then science and technology. Last year we had 55% meeting exceeding. Kind of digging into this one a little bit. We missed some points really around life sciences. So we're going to kind of look at that and see what's going on with that. And then we move to the high school. So here's our high school MCAS. We don't do iReady at the high school level, but this is our ELA scores. Now we're up to 93% meeting or exceeding, and the percentages at the end of exceeding and meeting or missing. So I'll let you know there was 32% of students who took the ELA MCAS in 10th grade exceeded expectations, and 61% met. That's just phenomenal. That was the third highest in the state. And our growth percentage is 60% too. So even, we had great scores last year. I believe we were 89%. To go 89 to 93 and then have 60% growth for our students is fabulous. And you can see that there's nobody in the not meeting expectations. And the same with not meeting expectations in math. We have 0 kids who aren't in that category. Took a little dip in math from 2023. We're looking at that as well. Looks like some geometry questions, but we're drilling down, figuring out where it was and what we can do about it. Again, we've got growth at 56%, and then not meeting 0. And so that number, the 28 partially meeting, those numbers are better than they were, I believe, last year. Science and technology, we had 17% exceeding, it's 78 exceeding and meeting. The trend's great. There isn't a growth percentage on this because they didn't take it in successive years. That's a great number.
This is physics.
Yes, this is physics. And now moving into kind of our upperclassmen, our 11th and 12th graders. On the left-hand side is the percentage of total AP students with scores of 3 or better. And so that's over a 5-year period. That number, I believe, over 2024 is 88%, the same as 2023. So, I mean, that's that 88% of your kids are scoring 3 or better is significant. And then this isn't on it, but doing some subsequent research, it's 80 to 85% of our students take at least one AP test before they graduate. So we've got a significant number of kids taking APs and a significant number of kids doing very well. And then on the right is just a school summary by year, the number of exams that were taken, the number of students, and their number of kids who are 3+, and then the total number of AP students who scores 3+, or percentage, I'm sorry. So then what I did is I looked through all our AP data, and we have a ton of AP courses for a school our size. So we have 22 different tests taken. Some were singleton, some were 3, some were 7. So we're meeting a lot of the needs of kids who want to take AP tests in different subject areas. But what I did is I took the classes that had enrollment of 20 or more. And so these are those courses, the number of students that enrolled in those courses, and then what the average score was. So you can kind of see that. And then in parentheses next to it, looking at this data over a 5-year span, where did that number come in terms of in relation to other years? So highest next to it means the highest average in the last 5 years. So it was a phenomenal year, really, when you're looking at K through 12. And just even the varied statistics. In the English Lit, and as a former AP Lit teacher, with 67 kids taking it and with a 3.45 average. That's pretty amazing because that's more than half of your senior class, probably 2/3 of it. And SAT data is a little different because you're mixing maybe a sophomore and juniors and seniors together. So what I did with this is the year constitutes the tests that were offered over that period, and just kind of combined them and took averages and compared it to the national average for the same time. So you can see here that our average combined with the national, we're significantly higher than the national average in the last 3 years. And our reading and writing scores and our math scores are very strong. And our number of test takers has decreased. SAT was being used a little bit less right around the pandemic, and now it seems to be gaining in popularity again as schools are looking for that standard number that they can kind of look at all their students through the same lens. My expectation it would be that that number will probably grow, but it also reflects our own population too. Now the fun part, when we look at our district in relation to surrounding towns, and so here we have grade 3 through 8 ELA on the left, grade 10 ELA on the right. The line that's above us on the left is Hingham, and below that is Scituate, Marshfield, and the state. So those are your colors, and then you can see our 10th grade ELA scores up there almost all the way to the top. That's 100% at the top. We're closing in on that. And then here we are for math. Same thing, same colors. Top one on the left is Hingham, and the top one on the right this year is also Hingham. And you can just kind of see that we're all kind of up there.
If I could pause there very quick, just to see an observation. The bump up on grade 3 through 8 math seems to be a secular bump up. Something changed in 2021. And we'll talk. Is it, and that was what I said, does that correspond to the Bridges program? Yep. So that's a nice visual proof in the pudding.
Nice.
And then this is the science. So you see our 3 through 8 science on the left, and we had that significant jump in 10th grade where a lot of the other districts were going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and Russ Sears, who is one of our physics teachers, he's been involved with the state, so he's been on this committee. And so he's been learning all sorts of things about the assessment and what they're looking for. And so we started changing our practices based on that. And you can see how it popped up. And then the second. So I want to give him a lot of credit for it because it's extra time for him to do this, but also it's been really helpful for us when we're looking at what are the expectations around of science. And it's made it more hands-on, more inquiry-based when we're looking at physics and how do we get kids to be thinkers? So the whole team has done a nice job.
And then just putting together some celebrations. All of our 10th grade students met the MCAS competency determination. You can't go without saying that it was a National Blue Ribbon School for Academic Excellence, the high school AP Platinum School. There are numbers for meeting expectations. The third highest in ELA. 86% of our high needs students met or exceeded expectations. And again, none of our students scored not meeting expectations. And then looking 6 through 8, our 6th grade ELA scores were the highest in the state. Our 5th grade, 8th grade scores, our 5th highest 8th grade ELA scores. Sorry, I've got numbers and words confused. It's my experience as an English teacher. And then we had 67% of our students meeting or exceeding in math. And for high needs, we had growth and partial inclusion student math scores from not meeting to partially meeting. And then in grade 3 through 5, 5th grade achievement scores were higher in all subject areas. Our 4th grade students exceeded expectations in math, increased by 9%. And our 3rd grade students exceeding expectations in ELA increased by 8%, which put our meeting and exceeding scores higher than they have been in that going back even to 2019. So in third grade, we finally, in the state, there's been a lot of concern because the scores in ELA and literacy have been consistently going down since 2019. Our third grade has now moved up and is actually going in the other direction. And then high needs in grade 3 is the first time test takers had the smallest number of students not meeting expectations, which was significant because that was a concern of ours coming in to last academic year.
Exactly. And that was our Student Opportunity Act was that plan, part of what we knew that we needed to do for our high needs population.
And now in terms of our opportunities for growth, we've had our glows, here are our grows. While we've made strides in writing and it's been a focus last year, there's still room. There's still room to grow there. And we're doing writing and responsive reading. We've got a lot of different initiatives going around with that as well. We're also doing a lot of work with benchmark assessments, and a lot of those are related to writing. So that is happening this year. In math and science, we're looking at standards and we're using some of the new data resources that we have been working on this year to kind of identify growth standards, but we can now look at them over a 4 or 5 year period and see where we've been missing the mark over a span of time, and then look at that in relation to our curriculum and see what kind of changes need to be made. As always, we look to move the margins. We look at the students who are kind of just on the border, and how do we get them over to the next level? How do we move kids and continue the high percentage for growth? I've been doing data meetings. I just went through all the Deer Hill teachers and showing them the new data dashboards that we're working on to bring about, hopefully, well, everyone will have access at the end of this year, early next year, and how they can look at their own data to drive their own instructional decisions. So there's been a really great conversation, and just having a one spot where teachers can look at their classroom data is going to make a big difference. And then also we're working district-wide with the development of benchmarks, especially at the secondary level, which will help us with our curriculum alignment. So when we're moving, we're not losing sight of all the standards and how they flow from one grade to the next.
So then when we think about action steps to support high need students, the data in 2023 did indicate that there was a proficiency gap for high need students when it related to statewide assessment. And so, recently I attended a conference with Dr. Scollins and our data, Lisa Porlise, IT person, to kind of sort out where these discrepancies were. Was it a data component, which was an element to why we received that rating, but then also really to look at why there's that proficiency gap for high need students. So that could be special education students, ELL students, low income students. And so I'll be working to create a task force in coming weeks that will be inclusive of general education teachers, special education teachers, parents, district representation, to really look at those root causes behind those proficiency gaps, without, diving too deep into individual student data, which will also be happening, parallel to this process, to really look at, reasons behind that. Obviously students with identified disabilities, which will struggle with, state assessments, but it's really important to look at that data and to create individual plans for students to try to close that gap, and to move students forward. I have to say it is exciting news though to see that all of our special education students did meet that threshold for graduation requirements, that meeting or exceeding expectations. And it's also worth noting too that while it has changed with the election, partially meeting also would indicate like that competency determination. And so it is good to see that while we have students identified as not meeting, in the lower levels, as we move through that number really to decrease, and then at that 10th grade level where it really does, kind of count in a sense, we see that kids do make it over the line. And so again, the task force will really be looking at like what we can do sooner to try to close that proficiency gap. And so I welcome any, participation from families or anyone, at this point in time, but there will be a correspondence coming out for an opportunity to join that committee and that task force. And then it's just important to consider what our special education staff do to support students on IEPs. when it comes to MCAS scores and looking at kind of the breakdown of where, students fell down on these tests. So an item analysis, which that data is relevant and will be super important too, as we look at the different data dashboards that are created by the district. So special education teachers can really target that specialized instruction with where there may be gaps, whether it's a certain type of question on math. Is it the open responses? Is it the writing, which is a global concern that we're working on? And so that work does go on behind the scenes, and that will come up at IEP meetings with families as we consider how students who receive special education services receive support when it comes to statewide assessments.
Great. All right. Anything else before I open it to committee for? So I'll just kind of go around the room. Ms. Hannah, do you have any comments, questions?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously incredibly impressive from a number standpoint, data standpoint and everything. I'm curious, and I get the focus of this is around MCAS, but like, what are we doing to balance teaching to the test versus teaching in general? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good question. I think what I tried to do this year was kind of bring in some other data points, whereas last year it was all MCAS. But we're really looking at a lot of our iReady data, our benchmark assessments, and really that's driving it. What MCAS really helps us to do is say, are we addressing all these standards? Or are we falling a little short here? And then using that information to go back to the curriculum and look at our benchmark assessments, look at our other assessment data.
And we teach the standards, so that's what all our curriculum is aligned to, so they are teaching the standards. Could say, well, the test is the standards, so if we are teaching well, then they're going to do well on the MCAS, right? Because it's holistic around, right? That's
And I think, you are part of the visioning meetings
Yeah.
as well. And so as we think about those meetings and the strategic plan that led us to this year and the strategic plan that we will be building, we are trying to build student learning experiences that are meaningful and relevant in project-based or deeper learning experiences. And all of those experiences are designed around the standards. And so there are ways to teach the standards that aren't what I think the community thinks of as teaching to the test.
Okay.
And so when you teach the standards in engaging ways where kids are jumping in and really thinking about content and curriculum, then the test scores continue to show that they are achieving at high levels and that the teachers are teaching in ways that meet the traditional test measurements. So I think it is a balance, and I don't want anyone to ever think that we are only teaching to the test or this is the only measure of success. Student engagement and student love of learning is equally as important.
Perfect. And one other question. Thank you for that. I think that's important here.
Yeah.
In terms of like, do we, as we look at this data, are we looking at any like gaps from COVID still being taking effect or being a factor in, especially in that like middle school Deer Hill?
So COVID, the impact of COVID, we're not seeing that
As
we're still seeing a little bit in Deer Hill, but third grade, like I said, just crossed that threshold. But that's been the longest delay, has been the literacy piece. I think the data coming out of Osgood is really strong, and I think that feeds into that third grade. Yeah, but and all the other subject areas that we don't see at all, I'm sorry.
The fourth graders were in kindergarten during
Right.
COVID.
Yeah.
So it just, I know that it affected every grade level, every child in a different way, but every grade level in a different way. And I just didn't know if we were seeing any sort of patterns or anything.
Yeah, no, and even we have seen it in the 3 through 5 group. But even the last couple of years, it's not significant once we get to middle school. So it's like they're working through it.
Their path, yeah. Making it.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that some students still need
Right,
support,
Yeah.
for sure, but we're not seeing.
trends.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Mr. Carr?
Just, I think that, thank God we have data that we can look at. A lot of places don't. I work in a city that lost control of their public schools because they don't have any data or tools to do it, so thank God we have this. I'm so pleased with the results. I mean, it's always, there's room for improvement, but it's nice to, and I think it's great that we're transparent about what the results look like. I think that's great. So congratulations to everybody. This is terrific.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Ms. Leskey?
Thank you. I mean, this was a lot to digest. I
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
like I was doing a lot of writing and
Yeah.
like scribbling. So I probably have 100 questions. I'll limit myself to maybe the
You have
ones that
3
are.
minutes. No, I'm kidding. Yeah,
Thank you, to 2 minutes watching.
Yeah.
I think my
Yeah.
first just sort of observation was there was actually sort of what I looked at to see like sort of some like a staticness to our children, to the number of children, to the population that's operating below grade level, both on the DIBELS and in iReady and on the MCAS at our elementary level. And that by the time they're in high school, that seems to go away, which for me, looking at that says, well, goodness, if it is possible to have a school population within a building where all children are are at least above that, not meeting expectations, then I would expect that that's also possible for our younger grades. And what concerns me most about that is the sort of self-esteem aspect around struggle. And that presumably these children are sitting in our classrooms struggling in one way or another, whether it's academically struggling or emotionally struggling to sort of engage. And sort of what can be done about that to move that needle. Because that needle, to me, looking at it statistically, wasn't really significant. I'm not a statistician. You could tell me, and be like, nope, Jen, that is a statistically significant change in those populations. But looking at it as a sort of a neophyte, I was like, yeah, our kids are going through elementary school. Those who are in the red zone, stay in that red zone. Gosh, that stinks for them. And so I just sort of want to put out there sort of what can be done about that. How do we move that needle? I really appreciate, Mr. Stapleton, how you put forward, like really doing that item analysis, really sort of digging in, because potentially these children are the ones who really need, like, oh gosh, it's not all of this math section. It's just that you didn't understand the comparative part of it. Or whether it's the reading of the directions or the using of the technology or one of those things. And I appreciate that as like a first step, but I think overall looking at it, that was a concern for me.
Before we go, build on this question, because I have a similar thought, and Ms. Leskey always prompt ideas in my head. Are these populations static, or do we see some kids come out of the red zone and into the green, and then kids in the green to the red? Like how static, or is it the same kids year over year who are struggling? That's an issue.
And yeah, and that's why I wanted to make a comment, if it's okay, just
Yeah.
about like one of the growths of the partial inclusion students at the middle school level, moving out of that not meeting range into partially meeting. I think it's important to consider, and like, like obviously confidentiality is important, like in this type of venue when we think about how many students, because again, the number isn't large. Like the students that are not meeting or fall into those red zones have been identified as either special education students or students that are moving through like the MTSS process. So I completely understand we want to move them forward as well, but those students are receiving, either specialized instruction or tiered support in these goal areas, and not necessarily teaching to the test, but they align with the skills that would be on the test, whether that's reading comprehension skills, decoding skills, math skills. And as a former special ed teacher, I think developmentally, sometimes the test is overwhelming for students, and why we see like as they grow developmentally, as they receive specialized instruction over years, how we are able to get them over that line in grade 10. Not to diminish, like, I mean, I think it should happen, at the lower levels too. But I think that we are starting that work to really dive deep into like that analysis, and recognizing that, while we want high achieving for all students, like there will be like, some variability in how students perform. And so I think it is important to emphasize that the students who are not meeting have been identified and are receiving supports to help them, globally, not just for the assessment component as well.
But it's also across different measures. So that with the presentation that we're seeing at DIBELS and iReady and MCAS, and part of me understands these, like sitting down and taking a standardized test is odious for anyone. DIBELS takes all of 3 minutes.
Yep.
And to still not be performing at that's a normed test. And that those children, even though they're receiving that support, and some of them have been receiving since kindergarten, but may still be within that red zone in fifth grade. How can we move that needle? I guess it's just sort of a call to action to sort of really make sure we're supporting our youngest students the best we can. And I think the district is doing a good job. That's what the data was. That was what the story was that I was walking away with when I was looking at those red bits. Neither here nor, I mean, it is here or there.
And there.
What's that?
It's here and there.
It's here and there, yes. Are all kids growing at the expected rate? That when we're talking about average growth rates,
So,
is
yeah,
that an average? And
That's
then,
an average.
and how do we, I guess maybe it's linked into this, like really paying attention to our vulnerable students. Are they also growing?
yes.
Yeah, so some kids aren't. And
No.
So, and they're on our radar.
And that's something, people are looking at when they go to MTSS,
Mhm.
things of that nature.
And just to elaborate on that too, like if we see that a student is not making expected growth rates, like that is an indicator, if they haven't already been identified, that they should be identified, whether that's for a psychoeducational evaluation to dive deeper. Again, so it's being addressed, and then we're also considering like the student's disability and the profile, and then how we support that globally.
And then I'll just end on, because I know I only have 2 minutes and then 5.
That's the correct style. You can
Looking at adding additional benchmarks in the upper levels, is that something that's already been done in the elementary levels? Or if not, why is that not applicable in the same way
So
in
in
terms
the
of how
element,
that works?
in the elementary level, a lot of the benchmarking is done through the iReady and the DIMBLES assessments as well. So they have connection, they have pre-test and post-test that they're using. The elementary curriculum is far more structured than it is 6 through 12. So 6 through 12, often it's one teacher teaching a class. And so then it becomes, well, what's that piece that's going to make sure that we're aligning 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade? So that's a lot of the benchmarking conversations happening at the secondary level. At the elementary, a lot of those are already in
It's
place.
built in.
We have,
Okay.
you have 5, 6 teachers, right? Who are teaching the same curriculum.
Thank you. And again, I mean, I only have questions because it's interesting and I'm actually paying attention and engaged in it, so.
Totally.
And they're
Questions are
good
good.
questions,
Yeah.
and I think the beauty of some of the work that Rock is doing with the data and the data dashboards that are being developed is we'll be able to better actually answer some of those questions with regard to some specific students than we have been in the past. Because we didn't have the visual representation that we needed in order to actually move the needle.
Thank you.
So I definitely agree with Ms. Leslie and others. There was a lot there. Will this be available to people on the website?
Yeah.
I think that'd be helpful. I know I myself would like to spend a little more time with some of the data just to understand what it is and maybe have some more questions. I guess generically speaking, you've got some, and you put forward some action plans and some recommendations. Were there any other themes that you've identified so far where we should be paying closer attention as a committee or just as a school? Are there any other opportunities for development at either at a building level, at a grade level, at a curriculum level? Just trying to tease out what this data tells to the experts in the room.
I mean, I'm not sure there's anything yet from the school committee to support us, other than, helping us budget wise and making sure that we can keep the people we have and grow when we need to add people in positions. So that's probably the biggest thing, that you can do to support us. Trends wise, I think the writing was really big, and that's something that we're really focusing on, because that is also across content. It's not just in English. It's in science, it's in social studies, it's even in math. So I think that piece is our work this year, to look at that and make sure there are literacy skills in all the content areas. So we need to make sure that teachers are attacking that, and that we're working together in the same methods, right? In order to identify what those skills are and what we should be doing.
Yeah, I think so. And it ties into the curriculum review cycles that we're doing too. So we're doing a curriculum
have
review
English.
cycle in English and social studies this year. And so the data and how we go about that whole review cycle, and then what are our needs? What are we lacking? That's what we're looking for. And then, what comes out of that, maybe some ideas that are beyond just the scope of what we're doing.
I certainly think that the school district should be lauded for certainly some of these data points. I think I saw a couple on there, best in the state, 5th best in the state. I mean, these are not de minimis accomplishments. So kudos to our staff, kudos to the administration, and also the students. I think that's great. There's one this presentation was different than prior years. And so there's one data element that I didn't have that maybe we can look at in a future meeting. But a few years ago, we had a data element that showed I'm lacking the word, but the lower performing students, and there was our special needs students who had there was a high percentage who were not meeting expectations. There was like 60% or something. It was really remarkable. And it was Dr. Scollins, you'll recall that. And we really focused on that. And I think that has improved over time. And I'd love to see an update on that number, which wasn't quite able to tease it through these statistics. I know things may have changed and so on, but that is something that I think I'd like to learn a little bit more about. But this is great. I think everyone should be proud of where we are, and I definitely commend you where we're going. So, any other thoughts from the committee? Any questions before we move on? Great. Well, thank you very much. That was an incredibly fulsome report, and I appreciate your presenting it. Now it's my new least favorite section of the agenda: budget, resources, and governance. It's really the budget part that makes it my least favorite now. But I will turn the floor over to Miss Susan Owen, our Director of Finance and Operations, to give us another iteration of our uplifting budget report.
It's not as exciting as the data we just went over.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if we were making the most money of any school in the state as far as profits, that'd probably be a problem. So, but anyway, let's see where we are.
Okay, so this is the finance report through the month of October. Obviously, the school budget numbers haven't changed. The one thing that has changed is, and I mentioned in the last meeting, was we were going to project our salaries and get them encumbered on a purchase order so we can manually track that we make sure we have enough funding remaining to complete all our payrolls through the end of the year. That amount through the end of October was about a $17 million number for salaries. And it left us currently at the end of October with a shortfall amount of about $616,000.
And when you say shortfall, do you mean a projected shortfall, or do we have negative money in the bank right now?
If I unencumbered the salaries, we wouldn't be in a deficit.
So we have
right
money in the
now-
bank, but we know when we spend that 17 million in salaries,
Yes.
we will run out of money.
Yes.
So it's a projected deficit.
It is projected.
Yep.
But we do know, and we've been following it, and Superintendent Shannon and I and Assistant Superintendent Scollins we literally have gone through the budget line by line by line, and there is nowhere where there's someplace that we can gather any savings.
The other thing that Ms. Owens has encumbered are our utilities,
Yes,
because we knew
correct.
from previous years that those tend to go over, so she and Karen have encumbered what we had projected plus a little bit,
For utilities. Correct. So
expecting that those costs might rise.
there are other things that are encumbered, but the payroll is something that we haven't done in the past. The software we have doesn't allow for it, so we manually did it. But as of right now, if those were the salaries to be paid out through the end of the year and the encumbrances that we have for utilities, we're looking at a deficit.
and we're very aware of it. The budget is frozen. We're not overriding any budget, unless it's an emergency situation, and that can only be approved through the superintendent. Not great news, but we know about it early, and we're doing everything we can to try to resolve that, and we're communicating that out now, so it's not a surprise, and doesn't grow. Our sped tuitions have not changed over the last month. So last month, we reported that was a shortfall of about $263,000. That number did not change from last month to this month. It was due to, we had 3 unanticipated outplacements and 1 student moved from a collaborative to a private, which is a very significant difference in tuitions. A quick summary, if you go through the reports, will show sped tuitions on the 263,140 on shortfall, the utilities. The shortfall with the encumbrance is 189,000. We were about 100,000 or more short at the end of FY '24. Our special education transportation has a shortfall of about 10,000 right now. Custodian supplies materials currently shows a deficit of 10,456. And we still have the remainder of the year to purchase. And there are some things we can't freeze, like for custodial supplies, we need to replenish tissues and paper towels and toilet paper and cleaning supplies. So that custodial supplies materials deficit is going to grow. And then our salaries, whether it be we just hired in higher than the positions that we had, or there are lane changes, but right now salaries are showing a shortfall.
And so these numbers here, they add up to the 616, 624?
Yes.
Okay. And then on the salaries, these shortfalls, this shortfall versus our budget amount that we approved, the 23.9 million,
Yes.
how did we miss salaries by 143? Was there additional staff? Because that should have been a knowable in the budget.
So when we plan the budget, we're planning it now, October, November months, December months at the latest, and we're presenting a budget. A lot of things change from January to June. There's lane changes, a teacher leaves and we replace it with someone else. Custodial salaries, we've asked them to do more work than they used to doing, so there was lots of overtime that was kicked in for the landscaping and stuff. Same thing with, our bus drivers, their salaries have been elevated, so, that number, is with that encumbrance. That encumbrance number could change. If I have, a teacher leave now that's at the highest step, and then we hire in someone lower, then that salary number and that encumbrance number is gonna lessen.
Right. Okay. So between
So this is just,
when we planned our 23.9 million
correct,
school budget, we had changes in our staffing,
Yes.
which resulted in
yes.
at 143.
And this is just a snapshot in
Yep.
time.
No, that's very helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you.
These numbers could change. And again, like our utilities, we based our utilities encumbrance on the usage from last year, which was very high. It may not happen again this year, depends on what time of winter we have, and what the rates are at the time, whether they peak or off peak. So again, the utilities could also change. That number is showing with all our encumbrances through June. So again, it could fluctuate. There's room here. But I'm just telling you the bad news up front.
Yep.
Worst case scenario. And then, the usual, I can show you the, each school and where their budgets are and what they've spent. Circuit breaker, nothing's changed with circuit breaker. This is our current capital outlay for FY '25, what was regular capital and what was stabilization and what was used. And then this is a very draft capital list for the following, for next year. So you'll see, we have buses on there. We have the electric bus on there. We are looking to add a bus as we have retired our Bluebird. Our Bluebird is officially dead. So we've added an extra bus in there to replace, I should say extra bus, a bus to replace that Bluebird, because that is our spare bus. Other things on the list are, that were important were, for safety and security reasons, window shades, fix and replace in all buildings. We have the numbers. Now we're into the measuring of the windows. So I don't have a dollar amount for that yet. Same thing with the replacing projectors. The presentation equipment for Osgood and Deer Hill. We did the middle school 2 years ago. We did high school this year.
That was 255,000, so in that ballpark.
And then security equipment, which also includes cameras. So we have, Deer Hill does not have as many cameras as we would like. And there's some areas within all our schools that either our security cameras and equipment need to be replaced, or there is currently not any cameras or security in those areas. So that's on the list. And then we're continuing on with our furniture. We're trying to keep that as a standing line item every year so we can rotate between buildings and offices. As you know, Deer Hill has replaced all the furniture and all the grades. So now we'd like to finish up with replacing the furniture in the main office. And then at the middle of the high school, we've asked them to get some quotes and information on our counseling offices, because some of those areas that we've walked through, the tables are broken, chipped. They're things that staff brought in on their own. They look pretty awful when you're doing counseling or, having parents or students in. So we're looking for quotes in those areas. Again, we have shortfall in transportation for athletics, so you'll see on the list the 2 15-passenger vans. iPads at Osgood, which will give each class their own set. The high school, the game conference room, which I've never heard called that before, next to the guidance office. That furniture as well is pretty old and rickety. And then the NICN facilities is pricing out soft starter for the elevator at the middle of the high school. And the other items on here, we're trying to come up with a plan for facilities of how we can start to address some of the needs in our sidewalks and roadways and curbing, which is falling apart. More to come. We're just gathering information now. But we're trying to be as diligent and have more information than Capital would ever want to see, so we don't have to go back multiple times and don't have so many questions. And Superintendent Shannon and I have met tentatively with Capital liaisons just to kind of stop the process so they know where we are and what we're thinking of. And then you can see the grants. We're not fortunate in the grant department, as we don't have a lot of low income, so our eligibility for grants is slim. We only have a handful of grants. We lost the Title I grant this year, so you would see that on here. So truly, it's about 5 grants. One of them is the Medco, 2 of them are special education, and then we have the Medco Restorative Justice, which is a new grant last year. Revolving as well. You can see there are no excessive balances on our revolving accounts. Athletic revolving is showing a deficit. That's only because all the collection of winter sports has not gone in yet. So that deficit will go away. It's just a matter of timing. At the end of October, the deposits weren't made. But you can see none of the balances are excessive. Right down to our school lunch program, you can see we've done lots of enhancements in that area, and we've brought that balance down to $100,000. Obviously, we still have reimbursements coming in. We've only received September's reimbursement, so we have 9 more months of reimbursements, which usually are $200,000 each time. So that number's probably going to grow. This just gives you a breakdown, if anyone's interested in our FTEs and by category and our head count. Nothing's changed. We have not had any staff. And what percentage in salaries are regular and what are mandated special ed and then undistributed, which are like custodians and cafeteria workers, people that are not designated to either area. And if anyone wants to dig down into each school and how many positions of what they have, this breaks it down and what's budget funded and what's grant or revolving funded and how many positions of each we have. So it's line by line. It'll tell you exactly how many staff we have and in what areas. This is the middle and the high school. And again, it will show you our grant fund about 11.3 FTEs and a revolving fund about 22.9 FTEs. Our enrollment for November 1st. And class sizes at the elementary levels. Nothing's changed here. Our total enrollment right now is 1398. And here is the comparison from October to November. So we've added one student between October and November. Our electric summary, you can see our costs are higher than last year. Our usage is down a little bit. We are looking deeper into that. Facilities is going to do a deep dive for us and find out, why we haven't seen any type of savings with new lighting, and all the other upgrades and enhancements that we've made. And gas is the same. So gas, for whatever reason, the Osgood Elementary School, they did not bill us for gas for September and October. They told us we had a credit. So you'll see the number here is not really a true number. It does show we've used less, but that's because there was no reporting of data for September.
Like the bank error in your favor, monopoly.
So food service department continue to be very successful. We're still looking, for anyone out there looking for some work, we're looking to hire several food service workers. If anyone is interested, please apply. You can apply on School Spring. You can apply directly to this email to our food service director, Vinny Guadon, and this is his email address. Cohasset Middle School and the Friends of the Holly Hill have their garden program going, which is going very well. And then the meal count. So I know this was that we had a brief summary of it last month. I'm going to start building each month, and you can see the meal count here for 25 for October breakfast and September, October breakfast, September, October lunch, the totals, and then last year's. So you can see the comparison. Breakfast is down. The elementaries, I know Deer Hill got away from the sit-down breakfast and is doing grab and go, which is why the numbers are much lower. The grab and go is not as lustrous as the sit-down breakfast. But if you look at the middle and the high school, you can see middle school we've sold 10,000 meals, high school 13,000 meals, and then based on last year, it was 8,500 and 11,000. So we're definitely increasing our sales in food service. Transportation, we have transportation ongoing, ridership is up. As I said earlier, our old Bluebird bus has been permanently retired, is no longer repairable. I'm working with the town to surplus the Bluebird along with the mini bus, which has not been in service for at least the last 5 years, probably more like 10. Some of us probably don't even know that we have a mini bus somewhere. So we're gonna surplus those. We're just waiting to gather the titles. And that's why we're making a request to capital to replace the Bluebird for next year. I also, an update on the electric bus. So I was able to finally track someone down from NLX. The division that was handling our electric bus has gone out of business and moved to Spain, I believe. But there are other divisions that are open that are taking over. And they've assured me that their division is taking over. What started as the electric bus project with another division that's gone bankrupt. And this division out of California has taken over the project and will continue to support it and take over the contract. So that's good news. Last I heard, they were just bankrupt and we were trying to fumble around to find out who's going to support the software on the charger. They assured me that they would be taking that over and that we would not see a loss in service. And the person I spoke to, my contact said she was guaranteed her job for at least another 3 years. So that doesn't mean that in 3 years that division of NL will be gone. But she said she was insured at least 3 more years. So not a very happy ending to our budget presentation, just hard facts. We're not alone in this. We're probably one of the latter districts that have started to hit these shortfalls in all these areas, but we are now there. So, our major concerns are utilities, tuitions, transportation, and some of the salaries. And again, like I said, the budget is frozen, except for, the essentials that we have to have. And we are going through as a leadership team to try to rectify that deficit and then plan forward for next year. So we don't end up in the same place, as well as we have 5 body units to negotiate with. So we're going into it, probably another difficult year. I don't know if there's any questions on that.
Thank you, Sue.
Sorry for the bad news.
Awesome. I'll open it up to any questions, comments from the committee. I'll start with Ms. Hannah.
Thank you. That was pretty thorough. And
Uplift.
I'm sorry.
but thank you. I have no
I
questions.
can't always do
Thank
good
you.
news.
Mr. Carr?
Is there's an issue with the level 3 charger for the electric bus and the bill and it got turned off? Is that?
That's also this new division. paid
Sure.
bill.
You're paying the bill.
Okay, no. So we have an electric bus now.
We are convening a subcommittee meeting about budgeting
Yes.
the next 2 weeks. Tori and I serve on that, so we will dig in.
Selesky?
Just a quick question. Again, thank you. I appreciate the transparency and the sort of not trying to describe this in anything other than what it is in terms of the situation being a difficult one that we're in. The new bus, is that a lease? Is that an own? Is that a buy and used bus? That quote of $20,000 for a bus, was that just to lease a secondary bus?
To lease. an
Okay,
additional bus.
to replace. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So I've got a few questions as I want to do on the budget matters. I'm going to start with the easy ones. So I saw in there that we're looking for food service workers. I also am preparing for discussions with our bargaining units. I noticed that one of the provisions of our contract is that teachers do not do lunch supervision. Is it a potential avenue to hire people to do lunch supervision? Would that fit into our food service budget so that we have like lunch monitors that, because I think now a lot of that's done with the principals, frankly, and administration staff. So I'm just curious if that's an avenue that's been explored.
So lunch monitors cannot be covered by food service because they're not actually preparing and serving meals.
What if they did prepare and serve meals and then they watch the kids eat them? Okay, anyway, so that sounds like it's not an option. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, just trying what I can. What happened to the Bluebird?
Bluebird, it's beyond repair. It's a 2010. It's rotted, it leaks.
Well, I just didn't know because it was, I know it was dying and I just didn't know if like it exploded or like it just.
No, it didn't explode.
Something-
It's just, it's beyond repair now.
Okay.
The amount of repairs it needs far exceeds. So we're just gonna surplus it and cut out losses.
So, one interesting thing for the lunch and the meals would be what I'll call it as an uptake percentage or whatever, but a number of, if everyone got breakfast and lunch, all students and faculty, I guess, however you want to do it, but that would be a certain number of meals. What percentage of that are we selling? So like, are half the kids bringing their lunch, or is it three-quarter, you know what I mean? So like, over the course of a week, you would expect to serve a lunch to every kid to eat a lunch. So like, that would be the theoretical maximum number of lunches. I'm just curious as to what the percentage of lunches, how many kids are eating lunch, getting served them versus how many are bringing.
I don't have that,
Yeah, I'm just
I can get you that number.
for the next version.
absolutely.
And I will tell you that I learned, because I now do a superintendent student advisory council at all the schools. Some of our kids bring a lunch and get a lunch. That's something I've learned
That's
because they're
great.
free, and so they're getting 2 lunches.
But but it's not free if they try and get 2 lunches.
Correct.
Pay for the additional
No,
lunch.
they're, and when I say they're having 2 lunches, they're having the lunch that they brought from home.
Yes, no,
And they're having the lunch that the cafeteria serves.
well, I learned by
Yep.
looking at my school box that you pay for the second lunch as well,
Oh,
so,
yes.
yeah, so.
Yeah.
Or any à la carte, like, so any of the snacky type food that's not considered a meal, it's
Yeah.
called à la carte, you have to pay for.
That's good, because we're gonna need the money, which gets to my final question. So $616,000, physics will stop us from being able to spend money once we get to 0 in our bank. And that's gonna happen at some point in, I'm gonna guess, Marchish, maybe April. So do we, I know we're aware of this, but I guess what are the levers we can pull to help love, I mean, bake sale, I mean, I don't know, what are the potential levers that we can do to cut costs or to raise revenues? I guess what's on the table?
So we're waiting for Open Architects to complete their report. We are hoping that, and we actually did our kickoff meeting with them today. We've talked to them a few times, but Sue and I met with them today. And I know she's gonna talk about this, but I'll jump the gun a little bit. And they're reaching out to, we gave them a list of people across the schools and the town to talk to. And they're doing a full risk assessment of us, and their, part of their task is to find opportunities to help us close this gap. So we're waiting to see what they can share. We have gone through, there really aren't any places for us to cut. We have cut everything that we can cut. We have, stopped spending. So we may not be able to find other alternatives other than what Open Architects can find for us at this point. So we've been talking, Chair McClellan and I have been talking with the select board and the town manager, so they're aware of sort of where we are, and we continue to keep them updated. And then going into the following year is where we'll be able to start to make some decisions that close that gap. So that may look at like raising fees. It may look like making some cuts in places that we would prefer not to, but don't really have any choices. So we're gonna have some hard decisions to make as we go into the next year. We are starting the budget process with our principals, looking at what that could look like. It's a grim picture. And
Those are
so
fun decisions.
Open Architects is gonna give us a report, hopefully by the end of this calendar year, that we can use to build a more sustainable budget moving forward. And Sue just put up all of the areas that they look at. They're gonna do deep dives into these areas. So these are the 10 areas of financial risk that they have identified for districts. And they're gonna look at all of it from student services and transportation to fees, to our spending, to utility usage. They're gonna look at it all. So the hope is that they'll find areas where we can sort of shore up our shortfall and then give us some recommendations for how to move forward in a way that gives a balanced budget, which is not what we didn't come into the year with a budget that was balanceable.
So to build on that, I'm excited to hear about this, but do we I guess we're gonna have to have a plan for this year's gap and end of the year for, are they gonna give us that? Or, do we know what our options are too? Because it seems like we need to raise $617,000 by the end of the year, or save $617,000 by the end of the year.
Yep, they're gonna hopefully be able to close that, so it's a
They're not
smaller
just
number.
focusing on next year's
No.
budget, they're focusing
No.
on.
Now, I don't expect them to find $600,000. I'm hoping they find a couple $100,000. But then we can figure out from there what the plan is in collaboration with the town. Because
Right.
there is a reality to the increases that we were given for this year really covered just our staffing increases. And yet utility costs continue to rise, and those aren't things that we can choose to cut. We can't choose to not use the electricity or the heat. And so it's gonna have to be a collaborative effort to close that gap.
What a year to join.
That's right, that's right.
So
You know what? I like to be a problem solver, so here we are. We're
There you
gonna
go.
solve some problems.
And they're hoping to have us, the report to us before, hopefully the
By
holiday break.
January, yeah.
So just kind of going back to the agenda, unless there's anything else on the monthly update, I think our next thing is the budget calendar.
Budget calendar.
Can I just ask about the consultants? Can they look at things like, if they work for a bunch of districts, other suggested solutions to budget shortfall? They have some best practices category, or,
Yes, they do.
other schools are dealing with this, what are other people doing?
So the floor is yours.
The budget calendar, obviously it's a little delayed compared to normal, but this is half of a normal year. And we want to be, thorough in our budget evaluations. We want to get through Open Architect and see what suggestions they have. So you'll see some of the dates on our calendar pushed out. Normally, in the beginning of December, we're presenting a draft of a budget. We don't have a draft of a budget. We're focusing on this year right now. And we're just beginning the steps of next year. So what we've tasked principals with is, maybe department heads maybe need to present us 3 budgets. One level funded, one level services, and one, if we need to cut, where would you cut? What areas would you cut? Obviously we don't want to cut. So we're looking at all 3. So it's going to be a delayed process in a sense. We're going to meet one-on-one with everyone. I'm just trying to see in the calendar. January 8th, will be probably the first time you see a draft of a proposed operating budget. So it's a little bit later, maybe a month later. Again, we don't usually find out what the number is that the town is going to allocate to the schools until the end of February, beginning of March, when the governor releases the budget. So a lot of times we're doing the work ahead of time and then sitting and waiting and then have to make changes anyways. So this gives us time to go through and have meaningful conversations to see, what we can do, and I can give you an example. We recently we had a position custodian resign, and both the head custodian and the lead custodian said they don't think they really need it to be replaced, so we're not going to replace it. So that's a savings, a small savings this year, and it will be a savings as the whole position for next year. So, if we get creative and do things like that, nobody is, we're doing it through fruition. No one was cut. We just didn't fill. And that's not to say in 3 years we don't put it back on the list and say we now need it. But they feel very strongly that we do not need it right now. So. In that sense, we're looking at things like that as well. But this is the calendar, pretty standard to what we do every year. It's just the dates have been pushed out. We're still going to have a budget workshop, school committee, and the leadership team. And everything else is the same. It's just been pushed.
I'll note for committee that this calendar is in your materials, so I'll just open the floor if there are questions about the calendar before we move on to our next. Hearing none. Quick update on the electric bus, or did we cover that in the budget report? Covered. Excellent. And then we started the update on open architects, but I'll give you the floor for more fulsome.
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
We just had our kickoff meeting today, so there's not a lot of information. They're gonna send us their document requests of what kind of documents they want us to send and share with them, get the ball rolling, and then they're gonna start interviewing with a slew of people, both town and school.
Excellent. Well, I hope that finds millions and millions of dollars. Have they dug for oil at all underneath the school?
Apparently, there are lots of things that have happened underneath the school in the past.
How about crypto mining?
Yeah, but I just want to say thank you to all the folks in the town side who are going to be meeting with Open Architects on our behalf. We appreciate them in their time in supporting our efforts.
Yes, absolutely. So okay, that was a thoroughly inspiring budget and finance update.
I'm sorry.
We do have something to move forward on though, and that is on the agenda item is a vote on Osgood roof and fire alarm funding requests. Mrs. Shannon, you can fill in gaps. I've got the general high level, but in sum, the committee is being asked to vote on 3 items of appropriations from our stabilization fund. 2 of those are in connection with the MSBA approval for the accelerated repair of the Joseph Osgood roof. And the third one is in connection with what we've already spec'd out as an important line item is the repair of the middle high school fire alarm. So the first item is for the hiring of a project manager for the overall roof repair. And that will be a request from the stabilization fund to the tune of $15,000. We understand from MSBA that that is the price that will not be exceeded. So $15,000 will be the hiring of the project manager. And do you have a question now? I can go to the next
Do we
one.
hire that person or does the state committee?
MSBA.
So
Yes.
they have a list of people.
They do.
And they sort of rotate.
So the second line item related to the Joseph Osgood roof is the hiring of a designer engineer for the roof. We don't have a fixed number on this, but Nick Berardi has gone out to look for similar roles for similar projects, and the number is estimated to be about $100,000 for that work. So the second request would be $100,000 appropriation from our stabilization fund in order to pay for that designer engineer. Again, this is at the request of the SBA so that they can then take the project to the next level. So those are the first 2 things. The third thing is the fire alarm replacement. As you know, one of the early items that we identified in connection with our stabilization fund research was the big ticket item of replacing the fire alarm. It looks like that amount will be around $1.43 million to replace the middle high school fire alarm. That sounds like a lot because it's a lot of money, but it is a very big building and fire alarms are very, very important. So that's apparently what they cost in commercial buildings. So that's the outline. Ms. Shannon, anything that I've missed, or Ms. Owen, anything to fill in on the gaps there?
You covered.
Any questions from the committee on those 3 line items? So I'm going to look, we are going to vote on these, and the vote will be to request request funds from the stabilization fund. That will eventually go on to the town warrant and be voted on at the town. So I will take them in order just so we have them right. First, I'll request a motion for the $15,000 allocation from the stabilization fund for a project manager for the Joseph Osgood roof replacement. The motion made by Mr. Carter, a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Leskey. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. The motion carries 4-0. Our second funding item, I'll request a motion for the approval of a transfer of $100,000 for the hiring of a project designer engineer for the Joseph Osgood roof replacement. Motion made by Mr. Carr. Second?
Second.
Ms. Leskey has the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, so the motion has carried 4-0. Finally, we have do we make the motion now for the alarm system? I don't, okay. So finally, we're looking for an emotion for requesting $1.43 million from our stabilization fund to pay for the replacement of the fire alarm. I will say, I should have said this earlier, I can confirm we do have funds in the stabilization account to make these requests, and I believe also any pending requests related to the roof.
Yes,
So-
and there's an additional, the town voted an additional
They did raise.
1.5 plus 2.5% to go into the fund, so we are using some of those.
So do I have a motion for the 1.43 million allocation from the stabilization for the purposes of replacing the middle high school fire alarm?
So moved.
So moved. Mr. Carr, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Slesky. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. That motion also carries 4-0. So we have approved the request for all three items. Ms. Shannon, if you can, and Ms. Owen, if you can make sure that goes to the appropriate budgeting steps, that would be awesome. That'll close off our budgeting item. We'll move on to agenda block G, community relations and communications. Do we have any reports from our school committee subcommittees or liaisons? I will make a report. The middle school council, where I'm the school committee liaison, met today. And I dutifully did not attend, although I do have an in. My wife is on the middle school council as well. One of the things they discussed that was not an issue, but was a point of discussion a couple of years ago was the survey that went out to middle schoolers, talking to them about all sorts of different activities coming in connection with Safe Harbor. They looked carefully at that survey and addressed some of the concerns that it raised a couple of years ago. So that's happened, and they're also moving forward with some other policy stuff. So I actually have now made a report as my liaison role as middle school council. So there are no other reports. I'll close off that agenda block. There are no topics not reasonably anticipated by Chair McClellan or me in his stead. I don't believe we have any minutes to approve.
Just an update. Kathy continues to have me on a regular basis. I did finish them today. I will send them to Jennifer for tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Carr. And thank you, Ms. Bob. So with that, I'll see, are there any ideas for future agenda items that we may want to tackle? Fundraisers, anyone?
Do we have any executive sessions set aside for discussions around contract negotiations,
We do not have one for today.
or just in general?
But we don't have them scheduled. We will call them, actually, Chair will call them when we have news reports. So I'll speak on behalf of the subcommittee or the team that's working on that. We are engaging. There's nothing to at this point to report to the larger committee, but we will definitely keep the committee in the loop every step of the way as we move forward with that process. Great. So there is no reason on that score to move into executive session. And so with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion made by Ms. Hannah. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Leskey. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? 0. All right, with that, the unanimous 4-0 vote, the meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you everyone at home for attending. And thank you everyone here for all your work. Very much appreciated.
Good job.